Hey guys, welcome back to The Victim's Voice. I'm your host, Lorelai. This week's case is out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it's the story of a young girl who was looking for someone to hang out with and to possibly even start a relationship with. So, she got online and went on a dating app, just like thousands of other people do every day. The guy that she matched with checked all the boxes. He was cute, he was her age, had the same interests as her, and he also attended the same college. What she didn't know was that the good looks and seemingly nice demeanor was all a mask, and his true self would soon be shown in the most horrific way possible. This is the story of Jasmine Pace. 22-year-old Jasmine Pace, Jazzy to her family and friends, was a student at Chattanooga University while also working for her family's business. She had been living with her mom and stepfather, but as most young adults do, she wanted her independence and privacy. So they made her a cute apartment in their pool house. She had her own space, but was still just a stone's throw from the people that she cared about the most. Jazzy was beautiful inside and out. Her big brown eyes and long brown hair made her radiate with beauty, as did the love she had for her family and friends. If you were lucky enough to be in Jasmine's circle, she would always have your back. Even friends that she hadn't talked to in months would say that when they did eventually talk, it would be like no time had went by at all. One of Jasmine's friends described her as having a fierce, fiery, and loyal spirit when it came to the people she loved. She was an amazing aunt to her niece and a wonderful friend. Jazzy was an amazing sibling to her sister Gabby and her brothers Enoch and Aiden. She had another brother, Travis, who passed away after an ATV accident. Jasmine had been the one who found him and held her dying brother in her arms while waiting for paramedics. Jazzy was especially close to her mom, Katrina. She was her mini me and best friend. So when Jazzy went missing during the week of Thanksgiving in 2022, Katrina wouldn't stop until her daughter was found. And what happened to Jazzy is horrific and makes it hard to ever trust anyone again. Jasmine had met a guy named Jason Chen on the dating app Tinder in 2020. Jasmine was looking for someone to just hang out with who had the same interests as she did, and maybe to eventually take things further. But Jasmine was in no rush for anything serious at the time she made the account. She and Jason dated for a few months, but then lost contact. They reconnected 8 months later and started dating again. In November of 2022, when the incident took place, they had been back together for just a couple of months. Jason Chen was born on September 11th, 2000, and lived in the North Shore area of Tennessee. He attended Nolan High School. In 2022, he was a student at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and was studying computer science. On November 22nd of 2022, Jasmine had a very rough day. Her and her family had been gathered at the hospital since early that morning. Jasmine's great-grandmother, whom she was extremely close to, had been battling cancer and had taken a turn for the worse. And with her family by her side, she passed away. Jasmine came home to her parents after leaving the hospital, but she was restless and her mind was going a mile a minute. She was distraught, grieving, and needed a shoulder to cry on. Her family was also grieving, so Jazzy didn't want to overwhelm them with her feelings. So she decided to go to Jason's. That evening, Jasmine is caught on surveillance video leaving her family's home at 11:27 p.m. in her white Chevy Traverse. The next day, Katrina got a surprising message from Jazzy that said she had decided to spend Thanksgiving with her girlfriend Emma and her family in South Carolina. Katrina thought it was strange that her daughter would just leave like that and not be there for her family during this time. But Katrina knew that she was also grieving and thought maybe she just needed to get away. So she decided to give Jazzy her space. On the 24th and the 25th, though, Katrina reached out to Jasmine but got no response. Katrina started to get worried at this point. This was unlike her daughter. They were extremely close and talked every day, multiple times a day. And it was even stranger because Jasmine knew her mom was grieving the loss of her grandma. She had raised Katrina, so she had taken it really hard. So for Jasmine to not even check in to see how her mom was holding up was not like her at all. Then, when a post appeared on Jasmine's Facebook page that showed Jasmine wearing lingerie with a title that said, "Spending Thanksgiving with My Baby," Katrina knew something was not right. First of all, Katrina knew that Jasmine would never post a picture of herself on social media wearing lingerie. And the strangest part about it was that the picture wasn't even current. Jasmine had a large tattoo on her right upper arm, and in this photo, there was no tattoo. Later on in the day on the 25th, after having an uneasy feeling all day, Katrina went back and looked at the last message she had gotten from Jasmine, the one that said she was going to visit Emma for Thanksgiving. Katrina knew Emma well. She had been at their house quite often before she and her family had moved away. So there was no reason for Jasmine to introduce Emma as her girlfriend, as if Katrina didn't know her. Also, Katrina was quite sure that Emma and her family had moved to Kentucky, not South Carolina. She hadn't realized all of this when she first got the text. It had been the day after her grandmother passed away, and she had been in a fog and had been grieving the loss of the person who raised her. But now, after going back and reading this message, she knew in her gut that something was very, very wrong. Katrina called Emma's family right away and talked to her grandmother. Her heart sank when she was told that Jasmine wasn't there and had never been there. When she talked to Emma, she said that she and Jasmine had never made any plans of her coming to visit. Katrina knew that she had to find her daughter, and this is when this mama bear went into full detective mode. Katrina Bean is a badass, and her children are lucky to have her as their mama because she doesn't mess around when it comes to her babies. Her first stop was the Verizon store. Jasmine was on their family plan, so Katrina bought a cheap phone and had them transfer Jasmine's phone line to it. That way, she could see all of the activity on Jasmine's phone, including the last person that she talked to. The first thing Katrina noticed was that there had been no activity on Jasmine's phone for the last few days. No text messages, no phone calls, nothing. Katrina then logged into the My Chevy app. This is an app that came with Jasmine's Chevy Traverse. It gives information about the vehicle, such as its location and the last places the vehicle had been and the dates and times. Katrina figured if she found Jasmine's car, she would find Jasmine. The app showed that Jasmine's car had left her house on the night of the 22nd at 11:27 p.m., as we said earlier. It then drove to a home at 110 Tremont, arriving there at 11:43 p.m. It stayed there until the next evening of the 23rd. At 8:27, Jasmine's car left Tremont and drove to the Signal View Apartments at 900 Mountain Creek Road, arriving there at 8:49 p.m. It had not recorded any movement after that. So Katrina, her husband, and her daughter drove to the apartments on Mountain Creek Road, and sitting in the corner of the back parking lot was Jasmine's vehicle. Her sister said that they almost didn't recognize the vehicle as being Jasmine's because it was so clean. Also, Jasmine was short, only 5'2", and the driver's seat was pushed back further than it would have been if Jasmine had been driving. Katrina had seen enough. She was scared and knew it was time to reach out for help. At 7:10 p.m., Katrina called the police to let them know what was going on. Officer Pierre from the Chattanooga Police Department showed up and talked to the family. He didn't seem to want to take them very seriously, though. He basically said that Jasmine was over 18 and could disappear if she wanted to. While he was standing there, Katrina called the last number in Jasmine's phone log, the last person that her daughter had spoken to. It had been on November 22nd, and the call had lasted for 71 minutes. When the person answered, Katrina asked who they were, and the person said Jason. Katrina knew this person as the guy Jasmine had just recently started dating, but she hadn't introduced him to the family yet. Katrina told Jason that Jasmine was missing and asked him if he might know where she was. He said that he had no clue. He didn't sound concerned and didn't offer to help find her either. When Katrina asked him when the last time he saw or spoke to Jasmine was, he said he had last seen her on November 19th, but he had spoken to her on the 22nd, but only for a few minutes. Katrina knew this to be a lie because we already said her call log said they had spoke for 71 minutes. She muted the call while standing there and told Officer Pierre that Jason was lying to her. But the officer still didn't act concerned at all. Before getting off the phone with Jason, Katrina managed to get him to tell her his address. He said it was 500 Tremont. She asked Officer Pierre if he would follow her to the address, but he said he wasn't allowed to do that. He did, however, take a report and hand Katrina a card. He also called Investigator Blunt from the Missing Persons Division to let her know he had taken the report. He then told Katrina that the assigned detective should be contacting her in 24 to 48 hours. 24 to 48 hours. Katrina wasn't going to just sit around and wait for someone to call her. So once again, Katrina had to play detective to try to get anyone to take her seriously. Her and her husband knocked on every door at Signal View Apartments, hoping that someone had seen Jasmine, but no one had. Before leaving the Signal View Apartments, Katrina called the number for the security officer of the complex. She wanted to see if they could tell who was driving Jasmine's car when it was left there. While waiting for a call from him, Katrina, her husband, Scott, and Jasmine's sister, Gabby, and brother, Aiden, drove over to the address that Jason had given them. Katrina had a bad feeling about him and the way that he responded when she said that Jasmine was missing. When they got to 500 Tremont Street, they were shocked. Jason had given them the wrong address. The home at this address was an abandoned house. So once again, they felt like they were at a dead end. But Katrina wasn't going to give up until she found her daughter. Shortly after leaving the bogus address, they got a call from the security guard at Signal View Apartments. Katrina told them the situation, and he said he would look at the footage from that time frame and that they could come by and view it also. As they are sitting there in anticipation, they see Jasmine's car pull in. But unfortunately, they could not make out who was driving the vehicle. They did see another car pull in, and it was obvious that they picked up whoever was driving Jasmine's car. But they still couldn't see who the driver was of Jasmine's car. So once again, they were at square one. That is, until Katrina went back through her and Jasmine's messages. She had missed something. Something that would break this whole case wide open. On the night of November 22nd, the last night that Jasmine was seen, she sent her mom a ping of her location at 2:18 a.m. The address that the ping came from was 110 Tremont, not 500 Tremont. Katrina hadn't noticed this earlier because she had sent Jasmine a ping on the 22nd also, letting her know what hospital that they were at with her grandma. So at a glance, she thought it was the ping that she had sent to Jasmine. Katrina called a tow truck and had Jasmine's car towed to their house. Then they left the apartments on Mountain Creek Road and headed toward the correct address of Jason Chen. On the way, Katrina called Jasmine's dad, Travis, and filled him in on what was going on, and he said he would meet them there. When they got to the apartment building at 110 Tremont, They weren't sure which apartment was Jason's. So they started going door to door, showing everyone a picture of Jasmine and asking if anyone had seen her. While no one said they had seen Jasmine, one person did have some heart shattering information. They had heard a woman scream at around 2:15 a.m. on the night of the 22nd. Yet, no one called the police. Katrina immediately realized this time fell in line with the pin of the location that Jasmine sent her at 2:18 a.m. Jasmine knew she was in trouble and was letting her mom know who did it to her. Katrina and her family knocked on every door at 110 Tremont. Apartment 210 was the only apartment where no one answered. Katrina, Scott, and Travis all took turns knocking. That's when Katrina decided she had enough of the bullshit and decided she was going to get into this apartment one way or another. She would worry about the consequences later. At that moment, finding Jazzy was her priority. How she got into the apartment has never been made clear exactly. It was first said she used a credit card to open the door. Then it was said that they knocked so hard that the door just came open. Either way, it doesn't matter. She was looking for her daughter and thought she could have very well been in that apartment, and anyone else would have done the same thing, though this would be a point of contention during the trial. Upon entering Jason's apartment, Katrina noticed a travel bag on the kitchen counter. It was Jasmine's. Travis started looking through drawers, and in a desk drawer, he found his daughter's driver's license and credit cards. He decided to leave them out on top of the desk so that Jason would know that he had been there and discovered them, so that he would know that they were on to him. They also discovered glass all over the floor and a knife laying on Jason's bed. Katrina called 911 again for the third time. They came out and talked to Katrina, Scott, and Travis, then went around and talked to some neighbors. Then they left. Katrina was fed up and done begging law enforcement to help find her daughter. She decided that she would do whatever she had to do to find Jazzy her damn self. So over the next few hours, she re-entered Jason's apartment at least 2 or 3 more times, taking out notebooks, 4 phones, a camera, and an iPad. Anything that might give them a clue to where Jasmine was. Later that evening, Detective Zach Crawford was called by his supervisor and assigned Jasmine's case. Finally, it seemed that they were taking Jasmine's disappearance seriously. Crawford came in, and by midnight that night on November 27th, or technically the 28th, a search warrant was issued on Jason's apartment. Jason had not yet returned, so law enforcement went in. Katrina had told him that she had found and handed over all the items that she gathered to try to find clues to what happened to Jasmine. Detective Crawford was present for the search. Jasmine's family hadn't went through the entire apartment, but law enforcement did, and what they found told them that something very horrific had happened there. The apartment was covered in blood. Some was still visible, and other areas were only visible by using Blue Star, a liquid that shows the presence of blood molecules. It could have a reaction with bleach, but there was no bleach found in Jason's apartment. Michelle Johnson, who was the Chattanooga crime scene investigator, sprayed several areas of Jason's apartment with Blue Star, and that shit lit up like a Christmas tree. During the trial, Johnson was asked about the amount of reaction to the Blue Star in Jason's apartment, and this is what she said. Quote, very intense and long duration. It was probably the most I've ever seen in a reaction with Blue Star on a crime scene. End quote. The hallway had huge amounts of blood along with the bathroom. It was in the grout of the bathroom floors, on the walls, and in the bedroom. There were several pieces of carpet that had been cut up, and a huge blood stain in the bedroom was in the outline of a body that was laying in the fetal position. The blood stain was under the bed, but they could tell that the bed had been moved to try to conceal the stain. It would later be determined that this is where Jason left Jasmine to bleed out and die. There was blood behind Jason's futon in the living room. a butcher knife lying on his bed, clothes that had blood splatter, along with a box of black trash bags and a large amount of cleaning supplies that was taken into evidence. There was also the small amount of broken glass that had been found earlier by Jasmine's family. Detectives had come back to Jason's apartment a second time because as the carpenters were restoring the unit and the carpeting was removed, they found that the subflooring had the presence of blood. So they took samples from that blood also. Sometimes it takes up to 9 months to get the DNA results back from the blood samples found in a case. This time, however, they asked for a rush on the results. And just like everyone thought, it came back to being Jasmine's blood. They also checked the dumpster outside of 110 Tremont, and they found some interesting items. Lying on the ground next to the dumpster were pants, a shirt, and a pair of white tennis shoes that appeared to have blood splatter on them. There was also a used sanitary napkin lying near the discarded clothes. Detective Crawford also talked to Jason's neighbor, who provided them with surveillance from his Ring camera. Crawford used the surveillance from the apartment building along with other surveillance cameras around town to put together a timeline. They knew if they followed his movements, they would find Jasmine. They see that on November 22nd, 2022, Jasmine's vehicle pulls into the parking lot of 110 Tremont at 11:43 p.m. This coincides with the time she left her parents' house and with the My Chevy app information. That night, the neighbor heard a woman screaming at around 2:15 a.m. Jasmine sent her mom the ping of her location at 2:18 a.m. The next day, on the 23rd, Jason is seen leaving his apartment several times. At around 11 a.m., surveillance shows him at Walmart buying peroxide and paper towels. Later that afternoon, at 1:41 p.m., Jason went to the Walgreens around the corner from his house and bought Band-Aids and peroxide. That evening at 5:59 p.m., Jason is seen with a white hoodie and a white hat walking down the sidewalk in front of his apartment. He was pulling a hard-shell suitcase on wheels behind him. He walks out of sight towards the parking lot in the back of the building. A few seconds later, his black Toyota Camry is seen leaving the parking lot. Later that same evening at 7:03 p.m., Jason is seen again on Walgreens surveillance buying more peroxide. He then goes back to his apartment. Then at 8:27 p.m., Jason was seen leaving his apartment once again, walking down the sidewalk into the back of the building. 3 minutes later at 8:30 p.m., Jasmine's white Chevy Traverse is seen leaving the parking lot. The person driving was wearing a white hoodie and a white hat, the same clothes that Jason had been seen wearing the many times he was seen on surveillance videos that day. At 8:49 p.m., Jasmine's car was seen pulling into the apartments on Mountain Creek Road. It was driven to the far corner and parked in the spot where it was later found by Jasmine's family. An unknown vehicle pulled in right behind it and picked up whoever dropped off Jasmine's vehicle. The same vehicle was seen 20 minutes later dropping Jason off at his apartment. On November 29th, an arrest warrant was issued for Jason, and authorities located him 3 hours away in Nolensville, Tennessee, where he was staying at his parents' house. And when I say it sounds like some Brian Laundrie shit, it's crazy how these parents hide their little boys that like to murder their girlfriends. Jason's parents absolutely knew what he did, in my opinion, because when Jason was placed in handcuffs, the first thing he asked the officers was if they had talked to his lawyer yet. His mommy and daddy ran out and got him a lawyer, just like Chris and Roberta Laundrie did for Brian Laundrie after he murdered Gabby Petito. Why did they think Jason needed a lawyer, and why did they think he was staying with them and not at his apartment? His mom is a real piece of work, as we will talk about when we discuss the trial. They had a search warrant to search Jason's parents' home, and boy, did they find some interesting things. Jason apparently wasn't good at lying and had trouble keeping track of all of his stories he told because they found sticky notes all over his room, notes to help him keep his story straight. One said, Saturday, November 19th, last time I saw her. Tuesday, November 22nd, last time she called. Another said, long history of running away from parents' home, ran away to Canada, has restraining order against her ex. Another said, talked to the 26th. Did law enforcement contact other family members? What did they do? Another said, missing person yesterday. She would call me every day. Then he crossed out every day and said once a day. Then, in a notebook, they found some other things that Jason had written to try to keep his story straight. Last time I saw her was on Friday, November 18th. Talked November 22nd. Had a history of running away in teenage years. Mom is alcoholic. Ran away to Canada for several years. Was homeless. Dad left when kid. Restraining order against ex. They also had a search warrant for Jason's Toyota Camry, which they found in his parents' garage, so they had it towed. The SIM card for Jasmine's phone was found in a glass case in Jason's bag. A search of her phone data showed that her phone had been with Jason when he went to Walmart to buy the peroxide on the 23rd. They also had a search warrant for Jason's phone. There was a photo on his phone of Jasmine that was taken on the 22nd, the last day she was seen alive. It showed her in Jason's bathroom brushing her hair. It looked as if she had just gotten out of the shower. There were also screenshots of text messages that he had gotten from Jasmine, but her part of the conversation had been deleted. On the morning of the 23rd, he sent a photo to Jasmine's phone of a cup of coffee in his car that said, quote unquote, slept like a baby. It was determined that the photo had been taken over 2 years before. Later that day, he sent her another text asking if they were still good for dinner. But the message was green, which meant that Jasmine's phone was shut off at that time. What law enforcement was hoping to find when looking through Jason's phone was where he had gone after he left his house with the suitcase on the 23rd. Because of the amount of blood found in the apartment, they knew it was most likely that Jasmine was deceased and that she was probably in that suitcase. So they were desperate to find it. And they did. After examining Jason's phone, they found that he had gone to an area of Suck Creek Road that ran parallel to the Tennessee River. Detective Crawford and other officers hauled ass to get to the location. And there it was. The suitcase that Jason had been seen leaving his apartment with on the 23rd. And there was a body inside. They took it to the medical examiner's office and determined that they had indeed found Jasmine Pace. Jasmine was found inside of 3 trash bags, the same kind of trash bags taken from Jason's apartment. She had been stabbed over 60 times with the chef's knife, otherwise known as a butcher knife. The exact kind of knife that was found on Jason Chen's bed at his apartment. Jasmine had also been handcuffed and shackled. Her right arm was handcuffed to her right ankle, and her left arm at the elbow was shackled to the left ankle, putting her into the fetal position. Most of Jasmine's injuries were to the right side of her body. The medical examiner believed that is because she had been handcuffed and shackled before being stabbed and had been laying on her left side, causing all the stab wounds to be inflicted to the right side of her body. The wounds all went from right to left. She was stabbed all over, including through the eye, hand, and through her neck, severing her jugular vein. Some were deep punctures while others were slices. Her back had a large slice on it. Marks on her neck led the medical examiner to believe that she might have also been strangled. He also said that her death wasn't instant and that she had stayed alive for several minutes after being attacked. People that had known Jason over the years came forward after hearing about Jasmine's murder. Some of his classmates from high school said that he was known to impersonate other classmates online. A classmate that went to middle school with Jason said that his personality was way off and he was not good at social cues. A classmate from the university said that Jason gave off a weird vibe and that his behavior was unsettling. A former roommate of Jason's, Ryan Barrett, said that he locked his door at night and slept with one eye open because Jason made him uncomfortable. He had mood swings, displayed aggressive behavior, and seemed unhinged at times. Jasmine Pace was laid to rest on December 8th, 2022. Her funeral was held at the Calvary Baptist Church in Red Bank. With the overwhelming evidence pointing at Jason Chen, you would think that he would just plead guilty, but you would be wrong. He entered a plea of not guilty. When the trial started in January of this year, 2025, he didn't deny killing Jasmine. In fact, during the opening statement, Josh Weiss, Jason's attorney, stated to the jury that Jason did, in fact, kill Jasmine Pace. But he said that it wasn't first degree murder and that he should only be charged with a lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter convictions carry a maximum sentence of 15 years and a maximum fine of $10,000 in the state of Tennessee. A first degree murder conviction in the state can carry the death penalty, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, or life imprisonment with possibility of parole. Weiss discussed the night of Jasmine's death. He told the jury that the two were at Jason's apartment drinking wine when Jasmine heard a Tinder notification go off on Jason's phone, which was lying on the kitchen counter. Jasmine went into the kitchen to get more wine, and while she was in there, she took a peek at the phone to see what the notification was about. This is when she saw that Jason had been messaging other women, so the two began verbally fighting. We said that Jasmine attacked Jason with an empty wine bottle, and in reaction to being hit, Jason kicked her and she fell backwards. Jasmine then allegedly grabbed a wine glass and chased after Jason, who saw a knife, grabbed it, then conveniently blacked out. So, this motherfucker wants everyone to believe that 5 foot 2 inch, 98-pound Jasmine was attacking him. So, in quote unquote self defense, he had to handcuff and shackle her and then proceed to stab her 60 times? Is he actually serious with this shit? He just conveniently blacked out while shackling and stabbing her. And remember, all of her injuries had been to the right side of her body, and she was stabbed after being bound. So, how would that be self defense? And looking at Jasmine's toxicology report, it shows that she had absolutely no alcohol in her system. So, the parts about them drinking wine and her going in the kitchen to get more wine just weren't true. The first person the prosecution called to take the stand was Katrina, and if looks could kill, Jason would be a dead son of a bitch. And I'm sure that the jury did not appreciate how the defense was badgering a grieving mother. Although Katrina held her own and gave it right back to Mr. Weiss, who had the audacity to insinuate that when Katrina, quote unquote, broke into Jason's apartment, that she had planted evidence and made it look worse than it was. This guy is as dumb as Jason. Did she plant all of Jasmine's blood that was found? Or Jasmine's belongings that Jason seemed to be keeping as some kind of sick souvenir? He had the nerve to say that she had lied about how she got into the apartment and accused her of perjuring herself when she told him that she couldn't remember certain details from over 2 years ago. She told Weiss, "I was looking for my daughter and I would do anything to find her. Wouldn't you?" He ended his questioning after that. Jason's mother also took the stand and she did not help her son in the least bit and was a disaster for the defense. She didn't speak very good English, so they had a translator to help her. When she was asked if there was anything she wanted to say to Jasmine's family, this is what she had to say. Quote, "My son is a good boy and just made a mistake. Please give him a second chance." End quote. Thinking maybe she didn't understand what was being asked of her, the translator asked her the question again, and she gave the same reply. The defense knew this did not look good at all, so they asked the court for permission to call someone in the Chen family to translate. They thought that she wasn't understanding their translator, so they called Jason's aunt to translate. But once more, Jason's mom said the same thing, that her son was a good boy and deserved a second chance. The defense gave up and got her the hell off of that stand immediately. Needless to say, the jury didn't buy the self defense bullshit that Jason's lawyer had laid out. It only took the jury 40 minutes to deliberate, and they found Jason Chen guilty on both counts, one count of first degree murder and one count of abuse of a corpse. Thankfully, no one listened to Jason's mom about what a good boy her son was, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The next time this low-life loser leaves prison, it will be in a body bag. I hope that Jazzy's family can heal now that there has been some sort of justice. But no justice will ever be enough because Jazzy will never get her life back. Before I end this episode, I want to read an excerpt from Jasmine's obituary so that you can understand what kind of person Jazzy was and how the world was a better place when she was in it. On May 29th, 2000, our world became brighter when Jasmine was born in Chattanooga. Katrina stated that Jasmine was the biggest and best piece of her, and from that moment on, Jasmine lit up every room she entered with her beauty and grace. Her generous and thoughtful nature created a community of people that became better by knowing this amazing woman. Jasmine was a devoted aunt to Paisley Pace and Lily White, and godmother to Waylon White, and always made time to be in their life. Jasmine was an animal lover and cherished her 4 cats that she loved as if they were her own children. Fiercely protective of her family and friends, Jasmine was always there for someone in need to share her love and support. All those that loved and cared for this young woman are now missing a piece of their heart that Jasmine helped build. For photos from this episode, jump on over to the Victim's Voice on Facebook or Instagram or on our new webpage and join us here next week where we will discuss a new case. Until then, be safe and peace out.